Hi, this is Angel with an Arcane Mage video tutorial. I'm just going to jump right in here and go into talents. The basic talent tree looks like this. It's all points assigned but 2, and I'm not going to go into what everything does, but the 2 additional talent points that you've got left over, use them as the fight dictates. If you're going to be doing a lot of AoEing on ads, like in Cho'Gall, you're going to take the improved Arcane Explosion for AoE. If you're going to be absorbing a lot, like on the Trons, take the incanters absorption. And if you're going to be counterspelling a lot, like in Maloriak, you take the improved counterspell so that you'll do a bit of extra damage whenever you do counterspell. A lot of people want to know about stat priorities. What do you reforge and gem for? The most vital thing that you can get is intellect. Get as much intellect as you possibly can, and sacrifice anything else at almost all costs. After your intellect, you get your hit rating, and hit rating is your second most valuable stat, up until the cap, which is 17%, and you should try and get that as quickly as possible. And then the rest of the stats are kind of messed up at the minute because everything scales differently with different levels of gear. So if you just go for mastery, then crit, then haste, you can't really go completely wrong. And sacrifice anything that's on the right hand side of the list for intellect. And if you cannot sacrifice it for intellect, sacrifice it for hit rating up until the cap. Whenever you're gemming, the headpiece is absolutely no contest. Burning Shadow Spirit Diamond, and then these are the 3 gems that you're going to be using. You should never have to put any other gems in your gear except for these 3. And like I said, you want to sacrifice everything for intellect, but sometimes you can get more than just the intellect out of it. For example, in this piece of gear, you can see that with the red socket and the blue socket, you can get 20 intellect from the socket bonus, so you'll get 80 intellect plus your additional 20 from that multicolored gem. The same things with this one here. 80 intellect is what you'll get if you use the socket bonus with a hybrid gem, so right in there. So an additional 20 mastery. Now this piece of gear offers haste as its socket bonus, and you could really care less about haste. So just fire 40 intellect in there and get your 80 intellect out of those gems. And yeah, that's how you gem and sacrifice anything for intellect. Your spells are basically broken up into 3 different categories. You've got your offensive spells, like Arcane Blast, which is essentially your mana dump. It's your main nuke. Arcane Explosion, which is your AoE, and then Fire Orb, Arcane Barrage, and Arcane Missiles is saves you mana, which is important whenever you're in your conservation phase. You've got your cooldowns, which should all be used similarly except for Time Warp. All at once for your burn phases. I'll get into what I mean by burn phases and conservation phases shortly, but you should macro as many of these together as possible and use all of them at the same time. And then you've got your utility. Your invisibility and mirror images just will reduce or stop you from getting aggro. Your evocate is probably your best utility because it gets you your mana back. Ice block is extremely powerful in certain situations. For example, the drakes you can ice block off, blackout, and things of that nature. I'm just going to talk about a couple of add-ons that you should really have on top of your deadly boss mods and your omen and the very, very common ones. You really want to have some sort of add-on that puts your mana in a percentage somewhere that you can see it very clearly. If you're going to be working on percentages the whole time, so have your mana somewhere nearby and a good cast bar. I'm using Pitbull and Quartz. One thing that I notice is people cast incorrectly sometimes. Whenever you're casting, you should never have a pause in between your spells like you see here. You can see that the cast bar stops casting, goes away, and then comes back. A correct cast would be like this, where the cast bar never goes away. Basically, you're casting before your finished spell is up. You'd be casting at this point here. Push the button whenever your spell is not even close to being finished, and you'll get a lot more spells off rather than just, you know, every time you miss a quarter of a second, they all add up. And yeah, just try and guide your arcane explosion or your arcane blasts. This is what an average DPS looks like, and it's filled with burns and conserve phases, as you can see by the spikes and the lulls. And I'm just going to go into a quick fight that I did here. And the fight starts, I take a potion so that I'm able to take another potion in a minute's time. And I run right into the fray and use my Presence of Mind Arcane Blast and fire off my Arcane Power and my Mirror Images to keep my threat down, and I go directly into a big burn phase. And you just sit and blow off all of your mana, and the reason being is because you have you have Evocate on cooldown, and you just unload with Arcane Blasts all the way down until you're below 35% health, well, until you're at about 35% mana. So that's basically just what I'm doing here, is just unloading, and you do ridiculous DPS once you've got your potion and your arcane power and your mana gem all running at once. And after you get down to 35%, you evocate and go into a conserve phase. This is when you start using things like your flame orb, and the reason you would use your flame orb is because it procs arcane missiles. Arcane missiles is free. It's pathetic damage compared to when you're burning with your arcane blast, but it's what you have to do. So you go into this conservation phase where you want to keep your mana at about 90%, well, between 90% and 100%, and you're going to cast arcane missiles at every opportunity, just to keep those mana costs down. Whatever you do, don't go into casting 4 or 5 arcane blasts in a row, because that's going to cost you mana, and you really want to keep that mana, because whenever your arcane power comes off of cooldown, you basically want to move into a burn phase again. And well, not when your arcane power comes off cooldown, it's when your evocate is about to come off cooldown. So save your arcane power, save your mana gem if you have it. Don't just use them until you're ready for another burn phase. And once you got about 30 seconds left on your evocate, and it's gonna come off cooldown, you can then move into a second burn phase and blow your arcane power, blow your mana gem again, take your second potion, and then unload with arcane blasts again. Just nuke, 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 nuke. Once you get back down to 35%, your evocate should be off cooldown again, and then you basically sit and you repeat that. You go and you burn, and then you conserve, and then once evocate is about to come off cooldown and you know that you can get all your mana back, you burn all your mana off and restart the whole process all over again. This fight is just one that, well, it was just one that I recorded because I was asked to do this video kind of quickish, but at the end of this fight, you'll see here that even though my evocate isn't coming off cooldown for a long time, you can tell that the boss is about to die. And once the boss is about to die, it doesn't matter what what cooldown you have left on your evocate. Just blow all your mana off, and basically, as a rule of thumb, if you ever finish a fight with mana, then you haven't really done it as optimal as you can. So yeah, that's pretty much everything that I have to say, and I'll just leave it there, and I hope you enjoyed watching. watching.